The Philadelphia Eagles might be 2-2, but they need a new head coach. And I'm not going to lie, they soon might need a new quarterback. We'll get into it coming up next. The post-game show right here on Locked On Eagles.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, thanks so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen and watch each and every day, even during the blowouts. It's the post-game show. Louie DiBiase, joined as always by Gino Camilleri. We're brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL in all capital letters for $20 off your first purchase. We didn't even let the game finish out before we started the show. The Eagles, yet again, get blown out in Tampa Bay for the second year in a row. This is 3 times in 3 massive games since 2021, and I'm just going to say it right now. I was somebody that loved this 2024 team on paper. They're 2-2. Can this team make the playoffs still? Is there so many games left with a bunch of stars coming back from injuries? Absolutely. Will they still probably win the division or make the playoffs as a wild card team? Yes. None of that means the Eagles don't need a new head coach, and they have a quarterback problem right now as well. Long term, when it comes to Super Bowl aspirations, this team is going backwards, not forward. And Gino, like, people telling me that players just didn't execute today, do not want to hear that at all. I would understand it if it was just missed tackles, or if it was just penalties, or if it was just drops, or just turnovers, or just slow starts in the first quarter, or when it's just coverage issues. But when it's everything, that is coaching. When the same problems like tackling and penalties and turnovers and slow starts happen every single game, that is coaching. The Eagles have not scored a single point in the first quarter this entire year. They're always playing from behind. They're 31st when it comes to turnover ratio. They missed over 20 tackles today. That's happened 3 of 4 games this year. And these errors are all in massively big spots. These players are never ready to go. And how is that not on coaching? I'm sorry, the Eagles need an entire new coaching staff. And I know it's probably not going to happen this year, but if it talks like a duck and walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a freaking duck.
I love that you used my quote. And first things first, I'm so happy that we don't have to watch this team next week, because I don't think fans should have to watch a performance like that.
Even the wins aren't fun, man. This team is exhausting. They've been exhausting a job for 2 years.
I told this to my wife last night when we were watching Oregon, excuse me, I messed that one up. But I said, this is enjoyable. We're going to watch this Eagles team tomorrow, and it's not going to be enjoyable. It is quite literally a job for them. Nothing comes easy. And Luke Braun, host of Locked On Vikings, he has this like big apologist tour that the NFL is better than college football. You watched Alabama, Georgia last night, and then watched the Philadelphia Eagles play this game today.
It's not the same sport.
It's not even the same sport, and that's sad. And that part is sad, because we're talking about grown men being coached by grown men, not being able to get ready for a game that they get to play once a week, and you never know when it's going to be your best game ever, or last game ever, rather.
Gino, it takes them 2 quarters to wake up every single game, and that was the exact same sign of the downfall in 2018, 2019, and 2020. Every game we'd be like, can they start faster? This team is never ready. What is going on? I cannot believe we are literally in our own version of Groundhog's Day. The exact same timeline of 2017 to 2020 is playing out again. I know they're 2-2, and people are trying to gaslight me on Twitter saying the season's still young. I know what I'm watching. I have seen this before.
Yeah. It's one of those things, and it kind of exemplified itself. We were sitting there, me and my wife, watching the game, and Chase McLaughlin is lining up for that 52-yard field goal, and I look over at her and I go, if you expect anything less than for this ball to go right down the middle, you haven't watched this team long enough. Like you said, we're in a literal Groundhog's Day. And the one individual on Twitter who is coming at you that is a Jets reporter, stick to the Jets, my friend, first off, saying that it's unfair to compare this team and Jalen Hurts to the 2020 Wentz. 2020 Wentz was playing with nobody first.
The only difference is there's more talent on this football team.
Yes, and that's the thing I keep saying. What is going to break? The talent is either not good enough, which in my opinion, I either don't know what I'm looking at when it comes to scouting with this team, because I clearly believe that they are a good team. The quarterback is just not holding himself accountable. The coach isn't holding the quarterback accountable. the
coach isn't holding
GM
himself accountable.
Yeah,
so of course
exactly.
he's not.
The GM, I mean, we got to address Howie Roseman. Like, talk about somebody who's always proactive. This team looks to be behind the curve when it comes to the defensive personnel out there. You talk about these missed tackles. They're just getting
It was
bullied.
embarrassing.
It was
It looked like a
embarrassing.
little loop team playing an NFL team. How many missed tackles in the open field there were.
Take some pride. Like, put your shoulder down and hit somebody.
They had over, what,
they were going to win.
25 missed tackles today, Gino? It was embarrassing every single time they needed to get off the field. Guys are just slipping through their hands like they're covered in butter.
And we're not in Brazil anymore. You can't use the field as an excuse anymore.
Because again, and like I said, this football team is probably going to make the playoffs and be over 500 because of all the talent. You almost wish they, and this might be dramatic, I don't know, it's how I'm feeling right now. You almost wish they didn't have all this talent so the real core issues could be exposed to the point where they do only win 4 games and then you make significant change. And I'm not saying that has stopped Howie and Lurie from making change before, but they're not going to win a Super Bowl this year. And that's what I don't want to just make the wild card round or win a bad NFC East. And
it's September though. Like, you can't just sit on the Titanic, look at the lifeboats and say, we're not going to take the lifeboats. Like, there has to be a lifeboat. What is the lifeboat?
We have nothing to steer them with. That's the head coach.
You either have to get,
I just don't trust them.
I think that the analogy I used with Josh Allen when they fired Ken Dorsey and Joe Brady is the only recent example I can look at and say, this is what they need. They need somebody to rein Jalen Hurts in, because we came into this game saying, Jalen Hurts, you need to take care of the football. For the first half, he did that. Well, he did that because they didn't have any freaking yards in the first quarter.
He didn't do it because of the time of possession. He didn't have the ball.
It was horrendous.
He didn't have an opportunity to mess
Kellen Moore allowing Jalen Hurts to hold the ball for 2.96 seconds is downright insane. Baker Mayfield was getting the ball off in 2.26 seconds. So the game plan, you got outcoached on offense. Vic Fangio, Lou, I know in our neck of the woods up in Buffalo, my one good buddy, Mike Wentworth, he's a Dolphins fan. He said the Bills game where Stephon Diggs ran wild on them in Buffalo, Vic Fangio failed to put their best corner on their best receiver. We're watching Chris Godwin get covered by Avonte Maddox, and guess who else? Guess who else covered Chris Godwin one-on-one today?
Nolan Smith at one point was on an island with him in man coverage.
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Is it a Howie and Lurie thing who they want as a coordinator? Because I feel like I'm being the same person talking about Jim Schwartz and Jonathan Gannon and Sean Desai and Vic Fangio. I'm so sick of watching coordinators that they don't care about the matchup ever. It is always about what we do. This is our scheme. It doesn't matter what
it's
the
Chip
other
Kelly,
team
dude.
does.
We saw this. It's Chip Kelly, but defensively. That's exactly what we're seeing.
Me and you for 5 freaking days this week said, hey, the biggest mismatch of this game is going to be when Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, two very big receivers, are going into play in the slot. Let's not have our slot corner, who's smaller than me, guard him one-on-one. And then when you do that for 3 quarters and it's not working, maybe adjust and have Quinyon Mitchell or Darius Slay shadow one of those players. Nolan Smith at one point was one-on-one with those 2 guys. Reed Blankenship was. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson.
Tristan McCollum was on Chris Godwin.
2 really good boundary corners. I'm so sick of seeing coaches not adjust and do the same things every single year. I don't know if it's a deeply rooted fundamental issue of your owner and coach and GM and what they want, but something has to change because it's the same thing over and over. It's literally just this endless loop of insanity.
And I think the timeline, you put it perfectly. It's so similar to 2017 to 2020 for this Eagles team. And it almost feels like now, Lou, either one, Howie and Jeff are in love with this cover 6 world and the idea of this motion-based offense that they're trying to implement.
Scheme. And every coordinator they've had has had the same issue. So maybe the Brian Flores, look what he's doing in Minnesota.
Yes, with lesser talent. Or, Lou, it's the Doug Peterson, Press Taylor thing where Nick Sirianni goes where he's comfortable and doesn't want people to push him out of his comfort zone. And you stick with Vic Fangio and you stick with Kellen Moore.
It's a deeply rooted fundamental.
But who do we trust to make the changes? Though?
I don't know.
Because last year Nick makes the changes to bring in Patricia after the Sean Desai thing didn't work, but he also made the Shane Steichen decision as well. And I don't know what version of him you're going to get, but the most recent version is the entire coaching staff is broken. Mike Clay, special teams, Lou, like the game was over the second Isaiah Rodgers blatantly pushed the return man into Cooper DeJean. Lucky Cooper DeJean didn't break his leg.
I'm feeling the effects of DeJean from here, man. I mean, like, Kelee Ringo runs into him too. Kellen Moore had almost no creativity today when you knew you had to. You talked about this a lot on Friday. You need pre-snap motion. You need to scheme Jahan Dotson, Johnny Wilson, Paris Campbell open. Kellen Moore's game plan today, I have no idea what Gino, when a running back has to save you every single week in 2024, that's a problem. If a running back has to be your MVP, as good as Saquon's been, he shouldn't be the one carrying you, and he's the only one carrying you right now. That's a huge issue. And again, they're 2-2, but it feels like they're 0-4, and they very well could be 0-4 right now.
And the thing, we can't make the same mistake that we did last year where we were like, oh, they were winning these games.
Or 2018 or 2019. I fell for it then too, and I was proud of the resilience. But the win-loss record was lying to us. The playoff appearances were lying to us right in our faces.
Yeah, they say winning cures all. No, it doesn't.
Sometimes
it does
lies
not
and makes
cure
you
all.
stay complacent.
Yes,
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yes, 100%, Lou. That's a beautiful way to look at it. They're standing still. While the rest of the league is getting better, the Eagles are they're standing in quicksand. And it's not just one person, it's everybody at this point, man. Like the penalties, missed tackles. When is this going to budge,
today.
man?
You have a wide open touchdown that was missed by Jalen Hurts in the first drive. Dallas Goedert drops like a 20-yard completion after. Drops showed up today. It's just mental self-inflicted wounds
everything
all of the time. And that, again, when it's the same problems over and over and there's like 7 issues that you have to fix, that's coaching. Don't just tell me the players aren't executing. I saw a ridiculous tweet by a reporter today about that coaching has nothing to do with the players executing. It's literally hand in hand. And today they needed that today. Their problems stare them right in the face. If they don't adjust after a bye week now, this team is hopeless.
Yeah, it's so sad to say, man. I feel the same way during this show that I felt after the 2021 Raiders game, where it's just like they were outclassed by a team that, Tampa Bay, they got some really good players, but they were banged up too. But did they make excuses? No, they were pissed off after getting run out of their own building.
That's why I don't want to hear the injuries, because Tampa was beat up too. Yeah, so people in the chat telling me they didn't have all these stars, don't give me that.
It's on everybody for sure. Like there's not one person or another, but how long are we going to sit here and baby the head coach and hand out awards like, let's go eat our orange slices because we picked up our first down with 6 minutes left in the second quarter. And you have to go back to week 17 of last year when they played Arizona that they put up points on their first 2 drives, Lou. There has to be somebody. There has to be an adult in the room that gets them ready to go. Somebody has to get them ready to go. Nobody's holding themselves
accountable. They don't have that guy right now. They don't. I'm sorry. They don't have that coach. And I don't know. Maybe you have to stop hiring these new young guys or a player coach. I don't know what the fix is. I'm not in there. I don't know what Howie and Lurie are looking for. But something deeply rooted needs to change, because when the same script is happening, a 4-year script is playing to a T, moment, event by event in the same chronological order, and the only 2 things that are consistent are Howie and Lurie, you have to look at those 2 and say, why is this happening?
Yeah, that's why it's on everybody, Lou. And right now, you just signed Jalen Hurts to this extension, right? Like, I'm zooming out for a second.
Yeah,
what is going to budge?
Sure, man.
What is going to budge? Let's leave it with that and set it up for the next segment.
We'll get into Jalen Hurts coming up next. The post-game show, the Eagles lose in Tampa Bay to drop to 2-2 with the bye week coming up next. Don't go anywhere. This is Locked On Eagles. Locked On Eagles is brought to you by Game Time, which has a new feature. They're called the Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets on other platforms. All in pricing, views from your seat. Make sure you're going to get a great view of your, of course, event. On top of the great prices, it's not only for sporting events, but concerts, theater, comedy, everything near you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets through Game Time. They also have their lowest price guarantee. If you find prices at a better platform, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, it's the Locked On Eagles post-game show. The Eagles fall in Tampa. What else is new? I never want to see that.
I hate this place, dude. I'm hate
sick
Tampa
of
Bay.
It feels like, I think you said it in our
Seattle.
E3 today, it's new Seattle, right?
Mm-hmm. It's new Seattle. Yeah, that's exactly.
That's what it is. If I never see that stadium again, I will be more than happy with that.
Freaking cannons piss me off.
Absolutely. All right, we got to talk about it, Gino. Like,
yeah,
the elephant in the room is the quarterback. Jalen Hurts now. And he should have had more turnovers today. There was a drop pick. There was a fumble that was recovered by the Eagles. 27 takeaways in 21 games is the most of any quarterback in the NFL since last year. And eventually, you have to say this is just who a person is when they make the same mistakes over and over and over again. And Gino, this isn't a year 1 or year 2 player. This is a year 5 player with a 21-game sample size of the same problems. And it's not like last year where the turnovers are all in spots that I can understand. It's a jump ball one-on-one to A.J. Brown. You have a lead. Like, I'll never fault you for being aggressive. No, like, these picks and fumbles are in the red zone. They're in your own territory. Mm-hmm. They're in close games where today you're driving with an opportunity. Everything that went wrong, you had the ball back with an opportunity to make it a one-score game, and you can't feel for the second week in a row backside pressure inside the pocket. When you are dealing with the same problems week in and week out, 5 years in, that's when I'm starting to get nervous that I'm watching 2020 Carson Wentz and watching him spiral around the pocket today and not feel the backside pressure of the guy you just evaded. How do you not know he's behind you when you just made a miss? That's Carson Wentz 2020 stuff. And I don't know how long the Eagles are going to say this is acceptable. Like, I cannot believe we're back in this moment again.
Time is just a flat circle, and especially when it comes to sport, really, and especially with the Philadelphia Eagles, you can tie so many different seasons together. But honestly, the 2020 Wentz is exactly the person that if you saw Jalen Hurts try to extend that play, and Grant Calcaterra, there was a window there for a second that he could step up and make that throw. But Lou, how many times did I say this week? Those throws where you're like, oh, maybe if I extend it, one of these guys is going to come open on the backside. How many times did I say that it wasn't going to happen this week? Mm-hmm. And they were all acting, everybody, the coaching staff, the average depth of target for Jalen Hurts at one point, Lou, was like 9.1 yards down the field. What are we doing? We don't have the guys to run 11 personnel. We're targeting John Ross more times than Jahan Dotson. But it also comes down to your quarterback understanding time and situation. And Tom Brady said it perfectly, man. He's like, the next evolution of a quarterback is understanding at times when to take that sack. My good buddy Dom, he plays poker all the time. He has this saying, a chip in a chair. All you need is a chance. If you don't have that fumble, you take the sack, you at least live to see another day. Lou, that was on first down. Like, that's on first down, man. Like, we got to live to see another day, Jalen. And the thing is, you just signed him to this extension. And are you going to try and unload another quarterback that you signed an extension to? Where have we heard this one before?
I feel like I'm listening to a 2020 Locked On Eagles podcast.
Can we just post an old show and see if people we should just AI out the Wentz parts and then put Hurts in, and people really wouldn't even be able to identify it. And do you think a coach can rein him in, though? Like, yes or no right now, do you think a coach can reel him in? I don't know who it is, but anybody.
I want to believe this is 2019 Wentz and not 2020 yet. And yes, because of all the good we've still seen in other areas, that if you get Ben Johnson in here or Joe Brady immediately next year, there's still a chance. But I'm getting nervous, man, because these turnovers and the not feeling pressure and the pocket regression and the vision issues, Wentz, when he was done, those were the first symptoms. Those were the major signs.
It's the exact same thing, dude. It's the exact same thing.
The other thing was Carson lost a lot of his elusiveness, the ability to create outside of structure. And Jalen Hurts, while he's had his moments this year as a runner, and he's still more mobile than most quarterbacks, somebody was tweeting out mobile highlights of Jalen from 2021, the way he was cutting, getting to the edge. Do not gaslight my eyes, people. I know what I'm watching. This is not the same explosive scrambler that we saw 2 years ago. I don't know what that injury was last year, but it affected him long-term, just like Carson did. Carson never adjusted to be a different kind of player. And Jalen right now, again, like, you just had to be a game manager, and he was moving around like it was 2022, and he doesn't look like that anymore. It's the same thing.
The people that say Jalen is just bad and like can't read the field and stuff
No, that's not true.
That's ridiculous. Like, come up with a better talking point. Like, the things that like take you from good to great as a quarterback that Tom Brady was mentioning, understanding when to feel that pressure loop. You said it. It's not like a video game where a guy goes behind you and then all of a sudden he's out of the equation. Like, this is the NFL.
He doesn't just drop off
pressure
the
is
mat. He's coming back.
Yeah,
That's
he's
what I
going to go for
understand.
the football. And that was the thing with Wentz too. Like you said it, the elusiveness went down when he had those injuries. Jalen Hurts, those injuries must have bothered him way more than we were led on to believe.
And he's never going to be a good enough pocket passer where if his mobility's gone, he's worth being the starter.
He has to have both. Like
he has to have both.
He does have to have both. Like, he was a top 5 EPA passer within the pocket this season coming into this
he's
game.
taking huge strides. It will never be good enough where if the mobility's gone, he's a franchise quarterback. That's just
unless he really evolves to understand pocket pressure, to live to see another day.
Watch today. That's not
yes,
the case.
and that's what. Can we get back to the Shane Steichen mode though? Like, that was the only time that essentially, this is going to sound so nerdy, but if you get the analogy, you're really going to understand. If you played the original Pokemon games, right, and you went to catch these legendary Pokemon, you had to have, I think it was the Great Ball or like the Elite Ball to hone them in. If you just threw like a normal Pokeball at them, they're going to get out. They need some sort of master ball, great ball. I know that you do, Lou, and I know it's a great analogy because they need somebody to reel Jalen Hurts in because you're not unloading this guy. It's not going to happen again because, Lou, Howie Roseman let go of his ego one time. I don't see him doing that again with a quarterback.
I don't think so. They're going to bring in another head coach. They're going to try to hire,
yes.
I guarantee you it's a Ben Johnson, Joe Brady type and hope that they got ahead of this a year too early rather than last time a year too late. Because they hired Sirianni, I think, with fixing Wentz in mind. But by that point, it was too late for Wentz. Psychologically, he wanted out. But also, even if Wentz stayed, it was probably going to be too late for him, right? So, they're not giving up on Jalen. And I'm not even saying Jalen's going to be Wentz, but I'm seeing Wentz 2020 tendencies on the field, and you're seeing it every single week. It's not once every 3 games, once every month, a couple times in one bad game. It's a weekly occurrence now. That is when it becomes an issue. And the problem is these coaches are not helping by getting this team not ready, where he's always playing behind, he's always in panic and hero mode because he's always trying to bring them back. So of course he's going to also
it's an avalanche effect.
Of course he's going to develop these over aggressive tendencies when you're never with a lead like it's 2022. So they just, it's not a good recipe. It's crushing your franchise quarterback yet again.
It's the kid putting the fork or the knife in an outlet. And instead of the parent saying, hey, you can't do that, slapping him on the hand, somebody's turning a blind eye to it. I said this a couple weeks ago. Your best players, you have to coach them the hardest. Like, Jalen Hurts has to be coached the hardest. And he could take it. He played for Nick Saban, dude. He played for Nick Saban. Like, we need to realize we are adults here. Like, we need to have an adult discussion that somebody's got to step up, man.
Dude, that's the craziest part is like Jalen Hurts of all people seemed unbreakable, seemed like the one guy that would never let things snowball. If Philadelphia can destroy that guy, this is an unbreakable toxic
It's a
machine.
black hole of a place.
You'll just
it's the
never.
best.
If Jalen is going to get rattled, I don't know who's like, everybody's like, you know what? One thing Carson didn't have that Jalen does is that like reserved, like just can't rattle him. He doesn't care that he's in Philly. Like the fan base, the coaches, like nobody can get to him. It looks like it's gotten to him. So
yeah, I got 2 things on this before we wrap up. One, he's not doing enough of the good things to make the turnovers be okay. The Super Bowl was probably the last time that he did that. That Buffalo game as well, Lou.
The first half of last year.
2, I'm hard pressed to believe that he, of all people, is going to be the one to let this thing continue to snowball. You said it, you hit it right on the head, man. Like, how does Jalen Hurts, who go back years, everybody gravitated to him. The locker room went to him. They were all out on Wentz. They buy into him. We're not going to go down this same path where they bring in another guy and this happens again. Because if it does, like you said, What is it? Is it a fundamental problem at quarterback? Is it a fundamental problem
I don't know. Are they
evaluating the
paying these
position?
guys too early based on one really good year?
Yes, there's and that's what I don't want. I don't want
know.
Jalen Hurts to be the guy that breaks the foundation to where it's like we really have a problem that maybe we got to tear the entire thing down. Like you said.
So we just got a comment on YouTube from Regal Eagle. I get the strategy of trying to get ahead of the market, but we can't keep paying quarterbacks after one breakout season anymore. Maybe that's the problem. Like maybe you're trying to get ahead too quick and you're making assumptions about a player. I don't know. Like again, I hate judging and criticizing without coming up with a solution, but it's one of these issues. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know what the
it's
solution
Howie's job
is
to fix it, and he tries the same thing over and over again at these, and it's not him, it's him. Lurie hired Andy Reid with the same blueprint of Doug and Nick, and it works early on, but it doesn't have a strong shelf life, and that's the question you have to ask is, why can these teams build, but they can't sustain? That's the major question you have to ask. Why are these guys great builders, but they can never sustain success over multiple years? That is the biggest problem. That's Howie
probably the
Lurie.
best takeaway from today, Lou.
Probably.
Yeah, like we can get into everything, like Dallas Goedert dropping the first down of the game and just little ticky tacky
things. You can get nitpicky and zoom in, but if you zoom out,
that's where you
two big questions.
You need to zoom out in this situation, and you could get so short sighted and just. Yes, I do want Nick Sirianni fired, 100%. Like I'm so over it. I think Mike Clay has outlived his shelf life as your special teams coordinator. Kellen Moore, these 2nd and 10 runs, like we got to scrap these things, man. Vic Fangio, the league is kind of figured this cover 6 thing out. Honestly, like one good game in 3 isn't spectacular. Jalen Hurts, you got to be accountable. Howie Roseman, you got to be accountable. Something has to give, and you have to step out and say, what is it? Because you have a bye week. Are you going to go down with the Titanic while you're looking at the lifeboats and just saying, no, we're just going to go down with the ship? I find it hard-pressed to believe that Jeffery, Lurie, and Howie Roseman, of all people, are just going to let this thing play out for 13 more games.
We'll wrap up the Locked On Eagles post-game show. Coming up next, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Of course, as always, this episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you could start the season with a big return on FanDuel, which, by the way, is America's #1 sportsbook and the official sportsbook here at the entire Locked On Podcast Network. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game that Jalen Hurts is spiraling off a cliff and he's more than likely going to throw an interception or fumble the ball, you could check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and also place your bets all on the same page. And if you took the Jalen Hurts anytime turnover, you would have been a winner. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet if you are new over at FanDuel. Once again, that's a $200 bonus bet when you place your first $5 bet. And that's at FanDuel.com. And we thank FanDuel for being the official sportsbook of the entire Locked On Podcast Network.
All right, the Philadelphia Eagles are 2-2 heading into the bye week after another blowout loss in Tampa Bay. But again, Gino, the bigger question doesn't have to really do with their record or their chances of making the playoffs this year. How do they bounce back against Cleveland? Their chances of winning the division. You got to zoom out. It's bigger picture issues when it comes to a Super Bowl, right? That's what you're aiming for. And when it comes to expectations this year, I don't know with this coaching staff or with the way your quarterback is turning the ball over, if you can reasonably expect this team to be a title contender. And that's just the cold, hard truth. No matter what you want to say about not panicking or blah, blah, blah with the talent in this roster, with the way their head coach and quarterback are right now, you can't win a championship. And I think most people would not debate me on that.
I think we would all be a little bit naive to sit here and look at what we saw with Doug Peterson and say, what if we could have got 2017 Doug back? We're kind of doing the same thing with Nick Sirianni. What if we could get 2022?
Are we doing it with Jalen? I want to hope not.
I hope Jalen isn't the case. And that's what you have to figure out.
21 games, 27 takeaways. That's a lot of games for a quarterback.
And that's
NFL,
why,
man. 21 games a lifetime.
Is it the chicken or the egg? Is it the head coach not holding him accountable? Is the quarterback not listening to the messaging from the coach? Maybe that relationship that was talked about all off season, Lou, that we kind of just said, oh, it should be okay. Oh, it should be okay. Maybe there's something there.
And
maybe
then how long, Gino, also, like, to go after Jalen for a second, how long does a quarterback need to be developed before, like, it doesn't matter who your coach is, you should know to believe that there's pressure behind you coming still. Like,
yeah.
When is that on you and not coaching anymore? Year 10? Like,
I know. The Josh Allen, Joe Brady thing, like, that was Josh Allen, what, year 5 or 6 that they made that change to? So that's that. I'm trying to pick real life examples to pinpoint this to, and that's why it's so difficult. And I look to coaching because a lot of the times you can get into this world, Lou, where the idea of moving on from a quarterback is great, but a lot of the time you don't get so lucky with Jalen Hurts. Like, after Donovan McNabb left, folks, there was a decade where they couldn't find a quarterback. It's such a difficult position to find, and coaches, I kind of wish this was the Premier League because they fire coaches for just showing up to the arena and the stadium the wrong way. And there's a chant over in England that if they were there when a coach is about to get fired, they say you're getting sacked in the morning. Then they chant that at the coach, and that's exactly what people would be saying to Nick Sirianni, because I don't believe I can get back to 2022, Nick. I just don't.
No, I'm out on that. I still believe,
I don't see it, man.
I think moving forward, I'm like, my motivation or the goal for this year is to watch Jalen Hurts and to see if next year he's worth bringing in a new head coach with the focus of fixing him, right? Because I think there is still hope for Jalen to be 2022 Jalen. We've seen signs of that this year. Like, we've seen the signs of life. With Nick, I'm not.
Yeah, Shane called the plays in 2022.
No, I have concluded, regardless of the outcome of this year, unless they get to the NFC title or win a Super Bowl, even maybe then, I have a conclusion on Nick Sirianni personally. I know that, and I felt this in the offseason, and it's been confirmed based on this first month of the year. I know he's not supposed to be the Eagles' long-term head coach. That's the way I see it, and I don't think anything this year is going to change my opinion. Jalen, I can still go back and forth. With Nick, I think I'm out. I think they need a new head coach, and we've been saying that for months.
And like we say, it's not just a one-person thing. I'm with you. I'm that Nick Sirianni train is parted. And the thing is, coaching all around the board is just bad, man. Like, your special teams unit had multiple penalties, multiple dumb plays. Your defense, the missed tackle, that's just not Philly football. I said last week that was a defensive performance that longtime Eagles fans can be proud of. I'm not proud to say I support this team after that. That was horrendous. Horrendous. You're professional football players. Like, get real. Oh, it's a little hot. Grow up. Like, grow up. Yeah. Like, hit somebody,
There's
man.
Another
like,
team on the field that's playing in the same
yes.
position. So
and all credit to Tampa, dude. They came out with an incredible game plan. And I think the most damning thing, Lou, Nick Sirianni has faced Todd Bowles how many times?
A lot.
We don't have the answers to this blitz. Like, we can't figure this thing out.
I know. And
come on.
Even with the defense, like, they're doing the same thing every play. Hey, maybe let's press here. 3rd and 7, 3rd and 11. Hey, maybe Avonte Maddox shouldn't be one-on-one with Mike. Hey, the pass rush is not getting there again. The edge rushers stink. We know this is a truth about this football team. Maybe we should dial up some pressures, Mr. Fangio, that supposedly blitzes more than any coordinator the Eagles have had in years. I don't know where that coordinator is.
Gone.
So I don't know. They need to go back and trade for Hassan Reddick and pay the man. It's a messy situation right now for sure.
It is a messy situation,
this bye week
man.
is so needed. That's for sure.
But I'm not gonna sit here and baby anybody. And anybody that sits online and is like an apologist for people in the NFL, you know how many people are vying for these jobs that want to get into this profession, and you're gonna make excuses? It's everybody. Like, you can't baby anybody. Hold yourself accountable. Everybody in that organization, look in the freaking mirror. Like, you had aspirations to go win a Super Bowl, and you can't tackle on 3rd and 14 when you have a chance to get the ball back. You take not one, but 2 penalties to allow a first down. You have multiple special teams miscues where somebody is shoved into your returner, and you're lucky your returner didn't break his freaking leg. Your quarterback has a problem turning the ball over. You can't game plan against a defense, which Todd Bowles has showed you the book, Lou. He said, these are the plays I'm going to call. These are the plays I'm going to call. He's done it for 2 years, and they can't figure out a way to combat that. They don't do it with a short, quick-hitting passing game that Tampa Bay did. Why is it every time that the Eagles need to do that, the other team does it? They get out-coached. They get outplayed, out-executed.
Like the Hurts fumble. In my head, it's annoying when you're like, oh, this is when that turnover happens, and it literally happens that way.
Oh, 100%, man.
And that
100%.
team has done that to me a million times this year, where I'm like, yeah, it's going well, but here's when they do this, and they predictably mess up. That's when it's discouraging, is when you're calling your shots on when they mess up, and they're messing up. So they're 2-2.
Disappointing.
I don't want to say that the sky's not falling, because it feels like the sky's falling long term. They can still make the playoffs this year and win the division, but I don't know how this team has any chance of raising a banner in 2024 with their head coach and quarterback performing the way they are. It's just simply not good enough, and eyes are on, again, the main theme, I think, of this show, eyes are on Howie, Roseman, and Jeffery, Lurie. They need to look themselves in the mirror and say, what do we do different? Because the 2017 to 2020 timeline, it's like the sacred timeline of Marvel. It's literally happening all over again. Like, we are back at the beginning. And that's when you know there is a deeply rooted core issue with your main decision-making, when it's the same chronological order of events. So that's my biggest takeaway, at least from this game.
I would say take a step back for a second. You got 2 weeks to really evaluate what this problem is. Maybe this early bye week, and I'm grasping at positivity. I know it's so hard in a moment like this.
Zoomed in, you can find a way to be positive. I'm thinking big
picture. Yeah, big picture.
But your small
where
picture,
do you go?
You could absolutely beat Cleveland and New York, and suddenly you're 4-2 and you're looking pretty good. It's not going to change my opinion.
And then the wins cover up exactly all of the long-term issues, and we're back in the same thing again. You have to get to the
long-term problems.
After this week, root cause analysis. Where is the problem? Nick Sirianni's flower analogy? Well, there's something in the soil, man. They got to find out where that poison is in the roots and cut it at the head.
I feel cheap, again, like criticizing things without solutions. If I had to, like right now, really quick off the top of my head, say what the biggest core issue, I'd say it's Howie and Lurie's coaching philosophy. I think
that's fair.
If I had to predict or guess what the biggest thing is, right. I mean, but if I had to say one thing is the key reason for all of this again, it's what they look for in a head coach, and it's their power dynamic. But we've talked about that a lot on the show too. So that would be just beating a dead horse. But I feel like that's pretty much this podcast a lot because of this football team. So
welcome to the Locked On Beating a Dead Horse podcast.
Absolutely. Stock Up, Stock Down coming up tomorrow. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Still got 4 more shows for you this week. Lots of content on YouTube and on X at Locked On Birds, at DiBiase Louie, at GC24_football. Thanks so much for making us your first listen and watch each and every day. For Gino Camilleri, I'm Lou DiBiase signing off. Thanks so much for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go Birds.
Fly, Eagles, fly.